Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Alex Nashton and this is Chris Yates. For your comedic relief this evening, you get us exactly as we are. Sorry, I know you were probably looking forward to a little bit more than this, but I think we're pretty funny without wigs or jewelry. So tonight we're going to be moving through an hour-long yin and nidra practice. So the movement's going to be pretty gentle, but we are going to be staying in the poses for extended periods of time. So know that just because it's gentle doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be uncomfortable. You might get very uncomfortable in a practice like this. Make sure that you have 2 blankets, a bolster or a pillow if you don't have a bolster, and then 2 blocks are usually pretty helpful in any yoga practice that we're doing. If you don't have blocks at home, I'll always say that you use whatever you have handy. You use 2 old shoe boxes or an old DVD set. Chris loves when I use that example for some reason. He always thinks that's funny. Or even like just really thick dictionaries or textbooks if you have them nearby. And I want to share with you guys before we really get into it, before we really get started, that we are partnering here with BODHI, so make sure you subscribe to their YouTube channel. On that channel, so the one that this is live streaming on, you'll find an amazing library of classes with a bunch of other different teachers, not just with me, but with some of my personal favorite teachers like Tamal Dodge and Seisha O'Connor, Stephen Wiegand, and JJ Cook, so make sure you check those out after today's class. But other than that, go ahead and get seated really any way that feels good for you. I usually start in supported virasana with a block between my ankles and the tops of my feet down on the floor. But if that's not feeling good for your knees or for your hips, then you can just cross your ankles in front of you. You really just sit any way that you feel compelled to. The physical seat is not nearly as important as how comfortable you feel in it. And then once you've got that, you'll bring your hands to your thighs and close your eyes. With the eyes closed, you create just a little extra length in the spine. You lift up through the crown of your head. Let your shoulders relax down your back away from your ears. And let your breath move really easily in and out. So you're not forcing the breath, you're not trying to control it, not trying to manipulate it. You let it move in and out effortlessly. You let your jaw unlock and all of the tiny little muscles surrounding your eyes soften. And with that, you let your awareness just take in how you're already breathing here and how your breath shifts the physicality of your body. And you'll notice that as your breath gets more subtle, and as your awareness gets more refined, you'll sense your breath moving into different parts of you that you normally don't when you spend all day moving around and with your awareness in a million other directions. You might begin to notice here as you sharpen your focus that the skull plates ever so slightly separate as you breathe in and knit back towards each other as you breathe out. That your sacrum down at the base of your spine moves back in space as you breathe in and pushes forward as you breathe out. that not only do your belly, your rib cage, and your chest move as you inhale and exhale, but that same expansion and contraction kind of ripples through the rest of the body. It ripples through the roof of your mouth, it moves your throat, it expands your lower back, and you'll feel it pushing your pelvic floor. Almost like you have all of these different diaphragms in different parts of the body. And as we transition through our practice this evening, you'll continue to stay in this internal exploration of the way your body pulsates as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And so at times that'll mean that your eyes are closed like they are right now. But other times your eyes might be open. And even with the eyes open, can you still keep more awareness inward? So go ahead and release your chin down to your chest, let the back of your neck lengthen, and then you'll take your hands and you'll interlace them at the back of your skull, not really pushing your head down, but just as a little extra weight, coaxing some length into the back of the neck. And if you lost it, you immediately come back to that observation of your breath. Noticing now how it gives you a little more access to feel the space around the tops of your shoulders. And so with it, you can start to ever so slightly turn your chin to your right shoulder and then your left shoulder, bringing a little more rotation into the back of the neck. And now you'll let your left ear come all the way over towards your left shoulder, so the right side neck begins to lengthen. You'll take your left hand to the top of your head, once again, not pushing the head down, but just as a little extra weight. And then right fingertips will really actively reach towards the ground beside you, and they may or may not touch. But just that action of reaching down with the right fingertips will help you draw a little more length into the right side neck. And now can you make sure here as you lengthen the side of your neck that your chest isn't collapsing down, that you're not caving towards the ground, but instead you keep your chest elevated, you keep space between your collarbones. Left ear falls to the left shoulder, right fingertips pull towards the ground beside you. Take a breath in here. And a breath out. Another inhale. And exhale. And then you'll turn your chin towards your left shoulder so you bring a little more twist into the neck. And then you can let it go, and we'll take it all the way over to the other side. So now right ear comes to right shoulder, the left side neck lengthens. You bring your right hand now to the top of your head, and then left fingertips reach towards the floor beside you. And again, we're not collapsing down here, we're not shrugging down, but instead the heart stays lifted. You push a little more weight forward towards your pubic bone. Collarbones are spread apart. And as the right ear releases towards the right shoulder, the left fingertips continue to reach towards the floor beside you. You make sure that you're still breathing, that you haven't lost track of yourself. And then you'll very gently turn your chin towards your right shoulder now, just bringing a little twist. And then you can let that go. And now you'll slide yourself forward onto all fours. So you'll come forward onto hands and knees. You'll slide your block out of the way if you are seated on a block. If you are seated on a bolster, or a pillow, you can shift those aside, and then keeping your wrists underneath your shoulders and your knees underneath your hips. And if you do have any sensitivity underneath your knees, then using your pillow or a rolled up blanket the way that Chris is a pretty good option here. As you inhale, you'll lift your heart, you'll lift your tailbone and arch your back body. As you exhale, you'll curl your chin into your chest and round your spine. Inhale, lift your heart, lift your tailbone, and arch the entire back so the front body opens. You exhale to curl in and round. The back of your heart moves up towards the ceiling. And we'll move like that just a few more times. Breathing in to open the front line, breathing out to open the back. And so whenever we're moving in a physical practice like this, most of the movements that we're going to take are going to accentuate the way our body is already opening up as we breathe in and as we breathe out. So typically as we're inhaling, there is more space, there is more opening in the front body. As we exhale, there is a little more lengthening in the back. Okay, so next time you find a neutral spine as you breathe in, and you'll pause there. You'll walk your wrist just a little further out in front of your shoulders, so you're lengthening your stance, and then shift your shoulders forward past your wrists, bend your elbows straight back, come all the way down onto your belly. Good. And then we're gonna do something a little funky with the arms here, but I'll explain more once you're in it. You're gonna cross right elbow underneath left elbow underneath your chest. So you're sliding the back of the right hand over to the left, you're sliding the back of the left hand over to the right. So the elbows are crossed underneath you. And really try to cross them as much as you possibly can. So imagine that I was standing on either side of you and trying to pull your arms in opposite directions, trying to pull them even more crossed. With that, the palms of the hands are facing up. You're letting your fingertips get really soft and curl in towards the palms of the hands. So there's no tension, there's no activation in the palms of the hands. You let your head get heavy, let your head relax down. The back of the neck lengthens. And if it's uncomfortable to just have your head suspended in space here, you can slide a block or even a pillow underneath the forehead so you have a little extra cushioning. And so now we're working to find a little more space and a little more opening between the shoulder blades. So we're working to release the uppermost part of the back. And I know for many of you, this is going to be a pretty tender, a pretty sensitive shape to be in. You might be feeling a lot of sensation in your shoulders, and that's very much normal here. But can you notice here whether you're kind of shifting your weight over to one side or shifting it over to the other to avoid the sensation you're feeling in your shoulders? So for example, right now I can see that Chris he loves when I pick on him. I can see that he's leaning over to the right a little bit more. So in that case, I'm gonna ask that he puts a little more weight over towards his left arm, a little more weight over towards his left shoulder, other direction. So you work to, sorry guys, he's making me laugh. You work to neutralize the distribution of weight in the uppermost part of your body. And you give yourself permission to grow more and more familiar with the way that opens and expands the shoulders, the way it makes space between the shoulder blades, and the way it works to stretch the tops of your shoulders here. And if you're not quite feeling anything at all in this shape, it usually means one of two things. The first being that you just have really open shoulders, and that's pretty common for people who do these kinds of practices a lot. The second being that you're not quite in the right setup. So if you're not feeling any stretch or anything happening at all in your shoulders, you might want to wiggle around a little bit more. So most of the time that's going to mean sliding the elbows underneath the chest a little bit more. In other words, taking them from the chin a little bit closer to the direction of the belly button. Tamal Dodge's favorite button, if you know Tamal. Okay, we're gonna take just a few more breaths here. And then you'll slowly start to ease yourself out of it, and we're gonna switch sides. So I know you probably don't wanna do this for a whole other side, but we're going to. So this time, left elbow underneath the right elbow. You slide the back of the left hand over to the right, the back of the right hand over to the left. So they're really crossing the midline. They're really crossing center here. You let the weight of your hands relax and fingertips curl in towards each other. If you need to find support for your forehead, you grab that support. And then you let the weight of your body relax down. You notice if there's any particular way that you're kind of leaning over to the left side or leaning over to the right to avoid the sensation you're feeling in your shoulders. And you do your best to equalize the distribution of weight, to really get yourself centered. And if your mind is really elsewhere right now, then I'm going to invite you to bring your awareness back in again, to make it a more introspective practice. And to familiarize yourself once again with how exactly you're breathing in and breathing out here, the parts of your body that you're sensing your breath the most. And as you sharpen your attention, as you get it a little more subtle and a little more refined, you notice the parts where you maybe don't normally perceive breath, but where it most definitely exists. We're going to take a few more breaths in this shape. I know it might be torturous for some of you. So eventually, you'll begin to uncross your arms until the palms of your hands make their way to the ground, framing either side of your chest. You press down through your hands, press down through the tops of your feet, bring yourself up onto all fours. And then knees can either stay close together or you can take them wide apart. Big toes will stay touching. You'll draw your hips back towards your heels for a child's pose. Your forehead will rest on something, whether that's the ground or whether that's a block. And you have two options with the arms and with the hands. You can either stretch your fingertips forward in front of you. You can also wrap your arms around your body like Chris is doing here and let the palms of your hands face up a little bit closer to your feet. And with whatever shape you landed in, I'm going to invite you just to sense the way your back body expands and contracts as you breathe in and breathe out. You get more and more intimate with the pulsation of your breath. So I'll give you just a few more moments in quiet here. But as you stay in the pose, can you really do your best to keep yourself on track? So rather than needing me to coax you all the time to come back to the present moment, you in a way become your own teacher, you become your own guide. We come to a yoga class like we go to any other class, a painting class or a surf lesson, so that we can learn how to do these things on our own. So can you become the regulator of your own experience? And then you'll slide the palms of your hands onto the ground in front of you if they weren't there already. Ease yourself up onto all fours. And then you'll tuck your toes under and press your hips up and back into a downward facing dog. And we'll use this as a very transitional downward facing dog, so you'll immediately walk your hands back to your... And when they get there, you'll put a pretty generous bend into your knees. And while you're down there, why don't you look at your feet and make sure that your feet are inner hip distance apart. And if you need to measure that, you take your two fists side by side between the highest part of each inner arch, and that's going to kind of give you the right proportion. That'll kind of give you the right distance. But once you've got that, make sure that your knees are not knocking in towards each other, especially for women. Just because of the shape of our hips, we have more of a tendency to let the knees knock in towards each other. But many, many people do this, not exclusively women. So make sure that your knees are kind of trying to pull apart here, that you keep your knees directly over your ankles and pointing in the same direction as your toes. And with that, you're going to bend your knees a little bit more, so much so that you connect some part of your belly to your thighs. With the connection of belly on thighs, you're going to hang on to either opposite elbows or opposite upper arms, or you might even just hang on to the backs of your calves. Give yourself something to anchor the arms, to anchor the hands, and then let the weight of your head be heavy. And now keeping the connection between belly and thighs, even if it was just the lowest part of your belly and your thighs that were touching, you're going to try to lift your sitting bones up higher towards the sky. So belly and thighs stay connected, but you try to lift your sitting bones up higher. Belly and thighs stay touching, and yet you try to lift the sitting bones up higher. So front body stays connected, back body works to lengthen. You're working in two different directions at the same time. We'll take a few more breaths just like that. And then you can release the crossing of your arms. Bend into your knees even more. Palms of your hands come flat onto the floor, and you'll walk your hands out in front of you. So you're transitioning through that downward facing dog again. Go ahead and release your knees down. And then you'll sit the hips over to one side and let your legs swing around in front of you. Chris is being extra fancy today with his transitions. Okay, so from here you can go ahead and turn yourself so you're facing the long end of your mat. So 90-degree turn. And then you're going to stretch your legs out into a big V shape. And make sure that you have your blocks, make sure that you have your blankets and your pillows somewhere nearby. I don't want you guys to think about activating the legs at all here. So you don't have to flex your feet, you don't have to point your toes. It's a pretty nice option to have the kneecaps facing up towards the sky, although as we move deeper into this pose, they will kind of inevitably begin to curl forward a little bit, and that's okay. But do your best in the beginning to keep them upright. Before we move into it, check out what's happening in your lower back. So if in your lower back you're already finding quite a bit of rounding, the tailbone tucking under, more weight back here on your sitting bones, then I'm going to ask that you elevate your seat up onto a rolled up blanket or onto a pillow or a bolster if you have one at home. Just because in shapes like these where we're seated, we want to work to take the rounding out of the lower back and put a little bit of an arch in its place to start. So in other words, we want to get the pubic bone down, the sitting bones move back behind us, and that just helps get us up on top of the pelvis so that we have somewhere to actually go. Otherwise, if we're way back here on the sitting bones, on the tailbone, we really only have the mobility of the upper body to bring us forward, and we don't actually have very far to go. But once we can get up over ourselves, we can allow the hinging in the hips to bring us forward and down. And so we're going to do exactly that, keeping length in the spine at first. You're going to begin to walk your fingertips forward. And when you get to that edge, where you get to that point where you feel like you can't really go much further, I'm going to ask that you prop yourself up with some blocks. one or maybe even 2 blocks stacked one on top of the other, and use that to cushion your forehead. And so we want to make sure that there is something to support the forehead, that there's something to support the upper body, just because when we give ourselves scaffolding, when we give ourselves something to lean into, it enables the upper body, it enables the upper back to relax and release even more. And that's really what we're looking for here in a yin style practice. We're looking for a release of control, right? In a regular yoga asana class, we're keeping everything so engaged. We're working to squeeze all of the muscles towards the bone. We're working to have the perfect alignment and isometrically hug in, and we're not doing any of that here in a yin practice. In yin, because we're working more with the joint space than with the actual muscle, it's actually more beneficial for us to not be engaging so much, to not be working so hard, and also to not be building heat, because when the body is warm, it tends to stretch out the muscles. But what we're working with here is the joint. And so in this pose, what that means is the pelvis. It's working to release the spine, the back of the neck. And it also will naturally, inevitably release the groin a little bit. That's pretty normal here, the inner thighs. And this is a part of the body that many of us tend to carry a lot of tension, especially in times like these. If you're catching the replay of this video, we're filming this during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so everybody's stuck inside, everybody's sitting all the time, and that tends to really do a number on our inner thighs and our groin. So we're working to release that, we're working to let that go. But even if you're watching this way beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, our society still has quite a bit of an issue with being sedentary and sitting all the time, so this will still be beneficial for you anyway. We're gonna take a few more breaths here. I don't know if you guys can see this, but Chris is balancing perfectly on the corner of just one block. Like a true yogi. So I'm gonna give you guys a little more time here, and you'll probably notice that the longer you stay in it, the more you'll kind of face that impulse to run away and escape and move and fidget, to wiggle and get out of it. And all of that is very much normal. But through all of those impulses, through your own observation, can you still choose to stay with yourself, to remain in quiet, to remain in stillness, to continue to reaffirm your commitment to being here and being fully present? So you come back to that observation of your breath. You come back to that observation of how it changes the physicality of your body. We're going to take a few more breaths here. So you can go ahead and take the palms of your hands to the ground in front of you again if they shifted at all. Press down through the palms of your hands and begin to roll yourself up one vertebra at a time. And once you're completely upright, you're going to take your hands underneath your knees. Chris, you look so wiped out right now. Take your hands under your knees. Draw your knees up until the soles of your feet find the ground, and then walk your feet in a little bit closer towards each other. And then you can give yourself a 90-degree turn on your mat again, so you're back the normal way on your mat. And then still holding on to the backs of your knees, the backs of your thighs, one vertebra at a time, you'll roll yourself all the way down onto your back. All right, so here on your back, you're gonna take your knees into your chest, and then take them out a little bit wider towards your armpits. And then we're gonna come into a happy baby just to round out the practice. So you can either hang on to the pinky toe sides of your feet if that's accessible for you. You can also hang on to your ankles or even just the backs of your knees. And what we're looking for here is the knees to continue to move down in the direction of the armpits. So it's almost like we're working to put a 90-degree bend into the knees, which also means that the heels will need to come up, the ankles will need to come up and stack directly over the knees to give you that 90-degree bend. But as you settle into it, can you also make sure that your sacrum stays on the ground so that the lowest part of your spine, the back of your pelvis, stays flat on the floor? And then the last little adjustment, if you do want to up the level of intensity, can you find the tiniest little arch in just your lower back? So the back of the pelvis stays flat on the ground, but then there's an arch in the lowest part of the back. Just enough that I could slide the palm of my hand underneath you. And then if you want to move it a little bit side to side, you can. You can rock to the right side and then rock to the left. You can straighten one leg out and then the other leg. And I'll give you a little bit of time to play just like that, finding some movement, finding some space. And eventually you'll bring yourself back to center. You can let go of your feet, let one foot at a time come down onto the ground. So feet come down onto the floor, and then you'll walk your feet out about as wide as the mat is. So you give yourself a slightly wider stance than normal. And then you'll lift your hips up and scoot your hips just a few inches over to the right. And then feet are gonna stay wide on the mat, but just your knees are gonna fall to the left. Good, and then you'll cross left ankle over the right ankle, or left ankle over the right knee, rather. Good, and then you can even stretch your arms up overhead and grab your right wrist with your left hand and just pull your right side wrist up a little bit more so you lengthen the right side body. And that'll give you a pretty gentle stretch from the front of the right thigh all the way up through the right armpit. So bringing even more length into the right side body. Make sure you're still breathing. And then you can let it go. So let your feet come back to their own respective sides of the mat. Both knees come back up again. You lift your hips and scoot your hips over to the left side of the mat this time. And then feet stay wide, mat width distance apart. Knees fall over to the right this time. And then right ankle crosses over the left thigh. So giving you just a little extra weight to bring length into the left side waist, bringing length into the front of the left hip. And then arms might stretch up overhead, and this time you might grab left wrist with the right hand and just work to pull yourself even longer here. Make sure you're breathing, that you haven't stopped. That you stay in observation of your breath. Chris looks like he's being exercised right now, which is another reason why we come to yoga practice, is to exercise our demons. Okay, go ahead and let that one go. You can bring your knees back up. Your feet are gonna come pretty wide apart on the mat. You'll scoot your hips back to the middle of the mat. And then we're gonna make our way into our final resting shape. We're gonna make our way into Shavasana. So you can go ahead and stretch your legs out in front of you. Chris is opting today to lay directly on top of his bolsters, and that's a personal choice that he's making, not my own recommendation. But if you're really feeling like you need a little extra support today, I would highly recommend sliding one bolster underneath your knees, just because that's gonna relieve any tenderness and give a little more of a break to the lower back. I would also recommend sliding a bolster or sliding a second pillow underneath your head, because when we can let the forehead relax just slightly higher than the level of the chin, it enables the back of the neck to release a little bit more. Chris, would you like a third bolster for the back of your head? Okay. And then you'll tuck yourself in. So you'll grab a blanket and you'll cover yourself with that blanket. And take the time, be very meticulous. Get yourself cozy. Because we are going to be spending the remaining part of the practice lying here on the ground, which might sound amazing after the long day that you've had, but I promise if you spend long enough in any position, it starts to get uncomfortable after a while. The reason why we're staying here is because we're going to be moving through a meditation practice called Yoga Nidra. It's my absolute favorite kind of meditation practice. I think mostly because you don't have to be seated to do it. It doesn't require the same level of discipline that a seated meditation practice does, because in a Yoga Nidra practice, not only are you lying down, but you're also being guided through it the entire time. So rather than having to put so much of your own effort into staying focused and staying present, the mind has the opportunity to let go and relax a little bit more because it's being guided. You're kind of letting someone else do more of the work for you. That being said, it is an incredibly profound practice because it enables the brain to move into the hypnagogic state between being asleep and being awake. In that state, we have greater access to alpha and theta brainwave prominences, which if you've taken my class before, you know that I always say that place is the seat of the subconscious and unconscious mind. So what does that mean for us coming here into a Yoga Nidra practice? It means that we have this incredible opportunity now to go back into our past and kind of pull out old belief patterns from the root, to plant a deeper seed of intention. And so I'm going to be guiding you guys through a series of body scans and a little bit of breath awareness, and then some guided visualization to help get you there and to help get you to that place. But do know that this practice does have the tendency to bring a lot up to the surface, and so you might have a particularly strong memory or emotion triggered in it, and that is very, very much normal. Rather than lingering on that memory or emotion for too long, try to keep moving with me. Try to keep moving with the sound of my voice as I take you through the practice. We're going to start just by closing the eyes and really settling into stillness. So if there's any final fidgets or wiggles that you need to take right now to get yourself truly comfortable, please do. Please get them all out of your system now. And then you have some options for where the arms and the hands land. The palms can either face up directly beside you, like a normal Shavasana, but you can also take one hand to your chest and one hand to your belly. Just make sure that they're not crossing over the midline, that the hands stay on their own respective sides. And there's a very important reason for that I'll get to in a little bit. But as you land in that stillness, we'll begin the practice with pratyahara, with a sensory withdrawal and turning the awareness inward. So you'll begin just by listening to the sounds you hear in the room around you, and maybe even the sounds you hear beyond the four walls of the room that you're in. You listen to the sound of electricity moving through the building, maybe water kind of trickling through pipes. You might hear a neighbor walking around or a car driving by. Rather than latching your attention onto any sound in particular, you're going to keep it moving. So you keep it floating from sound to sound to sound, taking all of it in as a part of your practice tonight. And in the same way, you'll begin to refine your circle of awareness even more to noticing just the sounds you hear within the container of your own body. So you listen for the sound of an inhale and the sound of an exhale. You listen for the sound of your heartbeat, the sound of ringing in your ears. You listen for any other internal sound. And you'll notice that the more you continue to listen without anchoring your attention onto one individual sound, the more bored your mind gets with all of the sounds surrounding you, with all of the sounds inside of you. And that eventually they kind of start to fade in their intensity. The mind grows tired of them, and we gain a greater opportunity to turn the awareness to something else. And so we'll move through a body scan where I'll call out different parts of the body, and you don't have to move these parts, you don't have to change them. Just simply notice what exactly you feel there. You'll start by bringing your awareness to the tips of your toes. Notice what sensation you feel in the tips of your toes. And that could be a tingling or a numbness, pulsation or heat. If you haven't established a very strong neural pathway connection between your brain and your toes, you might send your awareness down to feel them and might not necessarily get any feedback at all. And that's normal, that's okay. Just keep sending your awareness there. Keep trying to feel it, even if you're not sensing anything just yet. Can you feel all 10 of your toes in their entirety? You feel all 10 of your toes at once. And then you'll move your awareness through the tops of your feet. You'll feel the soles of both of your feet and both of your heels. Feel both of your ankles. And then draw your awareness up through the lower legs, through the shins, through the calves, and all the way up to feel both of your knees. Can you feel both of your lower legs, so from the toes up to the knees, all at once? And now, can you feel both of your thighs, the upper legs, your hips? Move your awareness into your entire pelvis and feel the entire bowl of your pelvis. From the tips of your toes, can you feel your way all the way up to your pelvis? So the entire lower part of your body. And from the back of your pelvis, can you send your attention into your tailbone? Can you feel your sacrum? And can you begin to walk your awareness up your spine, pausing your attention at the point directly behind your belly button? From that point, can you radiate your awareness outward and feel your entire abdomen? You feel all of your internal organs, your belly. And then you'll draw your awareness back to that point on your spine, directly behind your navel, and continue to walk your attention upward along the spine to the space that lives just behind heart center. And from that point, can you radiate your attention outward to feel the entire contents of your rib cage, to feel the rib cage as well as the lungs, as well as the heart, your entire chest. And from that point on the spine, directly behind heart center, you'll walk your awareness upward again and pause at the base of your neck. Let your awareness cascade down over the shoulders. Feel both of your armpits. Feel both upper arms simultaneously. Both elbows, both forearms. Move your awareness through both of your wrists. Feel the palms of your hands, backs of your hands, and all 10 fingers all at once. You feel all 10 fingers at the same time. And from the fingertips, can you feel the arms in their entirety? And then you'll draw your awareness back up again to the base of the neck. And as you walk your awareness up the neck, you'll feel the entirety of your throat. You'll begin to feel your jaw, your tongue, the entire inside of your mouth, and both of your lips together. Feel your cheeks, your ears, your nose and both of your nostrils. Move your awareness through both of your eyes and feel the weight of your eyelids. Feel both of your eyebrows, the space between both eyebrows, your entire forehead, your entire scalp, the top of your head, the sides of your head, and the back of your head. And now, can you very specifically feel the crown of your head? And can you grow your awareness so subtle and refined that you sense the way your skull plates separate as you breathe in and knit back towards each other as you breathe out, the way they expand, contract, expand, contract. And as you keep your awareness focused there, can you begin to count your breath backwards, beginning with the number 11? So it'll be 11 inhale, 11 exhale, 10 inhale, 10 exhale, and so on. If you lose count, go back and start over again at the number 11. Let go of your count wherever you are. Keep your awareness suspended there at the crown of your head and simultaneously bring some awareness down to your pelvic floor. And imagine a golden light moving from pelvic floor up to the crown of your head, where it moves up and out like the center of a fountain. Creating warm golden light all around you in every direction. I'll give you a moment there to rest with your awareness in that place. And then you'll let it go. And you'll bring your body back to this present moment. You'll bring your awareness back to observing how you exist on the mat. Feeling the blanket over you, the pillows underneath you, and welcoming a deeper breath back in. You'll begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes, start to wake yourself back up again. And circling out your wrists, maybe circling out your ankles, until eventually you gather both knees into your chest, give them a little squeeze, and roll over onto whichever side you'd like. We'll make it a very transitional fetal position, so you'll take your hands down to the ground and pressing down through your hands